Hey, what's going on everybody? It's your bro here, hope you're doing well, and in this video we're going to be creating a basic text editor in Java, so sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. If you find this video helpful, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Your support will help keep this channel running. Let's get started, people. Let's build a text editor. So just so you know, this isn't going to be anything that great. It's going to be of the Walmart Great Value brand of text editors. It's not really going to be that sophisticated, just something very basic. So let's begin by creating a new Java project. So File, New, Java Project. I will call this Text Editor, and then click Finish. And we will not create a module. Then within the project folder, Text Editor, we're going to create two classes. File, New, Class. I will call my first class just main, just because it contains the main method. So make sure to check public static void main and click Finish. Then for our second class, we're going to create a new class, File, New Class, and I will call this Text Editor and click Finish. Alright, so we have two classes, one called main and the other called text editor. Within my main class, I'm going to create an instance of my text editor class. So new text editor. You can give this a name instance like text editor equals new text editor, but I don't really think we'll be doing anything with this named instance. This should be fine. So we have a new text editor. Then this class is going to extends the JFrame class, extends JFrame, and it's also going to implement the ActionListener interface so that we can handle events. We'll need some imports, so we'll include these as we go along. And since we're implementing an ActionListener interface, we're going to need to add any unimplemented methods. So we'll need to declare and define this actionPerformed method, but we'll get back to this later. We need to create the constructor for this text editor class, so let's do that at the top. The constructor name is the same as the class name, text editor, and we're going to create our frame. So with frames, we usually say this.setDefaultCloseOperation, JFrame.exitOnClose. So when you click that right X in the top right corner, it's going to close out of the program, and we should set a title. This.setTitle, and name this whatever you want. I'm going to call mine the Bro Text Editor. And we can set a size, this.setSize, and we can pass in a dimension or a width and a height. I will set this to 500 by 500. And we can use a flow layout if we want, because I like flow layouts compared to the standard default border layout manager. So this.setLayout, or you can set this to null and manually place all the components, but I tend to like flow layouts. New flow layout. And then we'll need an import. And we need to this.set visible to true. So here's our window. Now pay attention to when I run this. This will appear in the top left corner. If you want this to appear in the middle of your computer screen, you can add this line of code. This.setLocationRelativeTo null. So this will appear in the middle of your computer screen, or at least close to it. Much better. I sometimes forget to include this line because it's not something I think about. Alright, that is the constructor for now. Let's create a JTextArea to add to this frame. So let's declare this outside of the constructor, but we're going to instantiate it within the constructor. So this is a JTextArea, and we will call this textArea, and within the constructor we'll instantiate this. And we'll probably need an import. Alright, so JTextArea, textArea equals new JTextArea. Now, for the time being, we're going to add this text area to our frame, but eventually we're going to be instead adding this to a scroll pane when we get to that point. We just want this text area to be visible while we're working on this. And let's set a size for this text area, so text area dot set preferred size, and we pass in a new dimension, and let's say this will be 450 by 450, something slightly smaller than the size of the frame. And let's try this. Here's our text area. The font is kind of small, so we'll change that later. And if we were to keep on typing, it's just going to continue off forever. We'll want to set the word wrapping to true so that when the text reaches this right border, it's going to move down to the next line. So in order to set that, it is textArea.setLineWrap. And we will set this to true. Let's also add textArea.setWrapStyleWord. And that's it. Oh, we set this to true as well. Okay, so then when we run this, and we were to type in some text, if this touches the right border or gets close to it, it's going to continue down to the next line. Let's also change the default font too. So textArea.setFont, and you can pass in a new font. New font, pick whatever font you want. I'll pick Arial. I'll make this plain, so font.plain. And then a size. 20 is a good size. And this should be slightly larger. This is some text. Cool. For this next section, we're going to add a scroll pane that contains a scroll bar, and we will be adding this text area to the scroll pane, and then adding the scroll pane to the frame. So let's declare a scroll pane. So outside of the constructor JScrollPane, we will call this scrollPane. And we'll finish instantiating this within the constructor. We'll need an import as well, so be sure to include that. So after the text area, let's create our scroll pane. So scrollPane equals new JScrollPane. And what do we want to add to the scroll pane? We're going to add our text area. And then instead of adding the text area to the frame, we're going to, in place, add this the scroll pane to the frame instead. There's a few things we need to set up with this scroll pane. So let's set a preferred size. We no longer need to do so with our text area. So type in the name of the scroll pane, and then we can use the set preferred size on the scroll pane. And let's add a vertical scroll bar. So in order to do that, type in the name of the scroll pane, dot set vertical scroll bar policy. And there is a constant that we need to type in within the method scrollPane constants dot. So let's pick vertical scroll bar, maybe always. You can also add as needed or never. Let's set this to always. And let's take a look at this. And for now, I'm just going to change the font to something slightly larger just to test the scroll bar. Okay, let's give it a go. So here's our scroll bar. It's currently not needed, but it's still visible. So let's type in some text. Type in whatever you want. All right, so as the text is being added to the text area, you can see that the size of this text area is expanding, and the scroll bar will actually move us up and down this text area. So cool, we know that this is working then. Now what we're going to do is allow the user to change the size of the font within the text area. So we can best do this with a JSpinner so that they can adjust the current size of the font. So let's declare a JSpinner outside of the constructor. So JSpinner, we will call this spinner fontSizeSpinner. And we will finish instantiating this within the constructor. So fontSizeSpinner, let's add this here. FontSizeSpinner equals new JSpinner. And we can set a preferred size to this. So FontSizeSpinner dot set preferred size. New dimension. 50 by 25 should be good. And then we can set an initial value, so fontSizeSpinner. Since our default font will be 20, we can set this to 20. fontSizeSpinner.setValue, we will pass in 20. Okay, so with spinners, they use something called a change listener. Since we're already using an action listener, this is going to get a little complex, but what we could do is that when we add a change listener to this, we can just pass in an anonymous change listener. So this part is going to be a little funky, but it shouldn't be too bad. So we're going to add a new change listener within the constructor, or within the method of this add change listener. So new change listener, and we will need to import this and then add any unimplemented methods. So what do we want to do when we actually change the value on our spinner? Well, we're going to change the size of the font within the text area. So textArea dot set font, and we will pass in a new font. We're going to keep the font styling the same, so we will pass in whatever the text area font is currently. So textArea dot get font, and then follow this with dot get family. For our second argument, we have to separate this with a comma, and then we are going to set this to plain, so font.plain, and then the size. So we need to get the current size of the spinner. So to do that, we type in fontSizeSpinner dot get value, and then we will probably need to cast this as an integer. So be sure to add this cast. And I need one more parenthesis. Okay, then we need to add this fontSizeSpinner to the frame. So let's add this before we add the scrollPane. So this dot add fontSizeSpinner. Now what happens when we run this, we have this spinner. It's set to 20 by default. Let's add some text. And then if we were to increase this, the size of the text is going to increase as well, or decrease. Now if we set this to something massive like 100, it's going to take up nearly the entire scroll pane. And if we were to keep on increasing the size, well then we have our scroll bar to actually scroll through this. I think I'm going to add a label that just says font next to this spinner here, so let's add that real quick. JLabel, we'll call this label. Actually, better yet, font label. Font label, add this import, and let's add this here. Font label equals new label. Actually, that's a JLabel. And let's set the text right away to just font, and that's it. And then we need to add this label. So this dot add our font label. And I think that's a little bit better. We just have some clarification as to what this does. It just changes the font. For this next section, let's let the user change the font color of the text area. And we're going to need some help with the JColorChooser class. But first, we'll need a button. So let's declare a JButton that will launch or create this instance of the JColorChooser class. So let's create a JButton, and we will call this fontColorButton. We'll need an import, and we'll need to finish instantiating this color button. So let's add this after the spinner. Right here is good. fontColorButton equals new JButton, and we can set some text right away by passing in a string to the constructor. So let's say color. And we will add this button to the frame. So this dot add fontColorButton. But I think I'm going to add that after the spinner here. We will also need to add an action listener to this button so that it does something when we click on it. So fontColorButton.add action listener. Since we're implementing the action listener interface, we can just pass in this. Now, within the action performed method at the bottom, we're going to check to see if the event that happens is our font color button. So if e.getSource is equal to our font color button, then we're going to create a new instance of our JColorChooser. So JColorChooser, we will call this color_chooser equals new JColorChooser. And be sure to include these imports. Now, to get the color, we're going to need to show a dialog box, and we will assign whatever we choose to a color. So color equals colorChooser dot show dialog, and we can pass in a parent component. We don't have one, so let's set this to null. We can set a title, choose a color, but it's not necessary, and an initial color if you want a default color. I'm going to set this to just black, color.black. And then we will need to change the current font color. So TextArea dot set foreground, we're going to set this to our color. And that's it. Let's try this. Let's type in some text. I'm going to expand this a little bit, make it larger, and we can select a color. Let's change this to red and click OK. Now all of the text within the text area is red. This next part's going to blow your mind. We're going to let the user pick a font that they want for our text editor. So we're going to need the help of a JComboBox. So let's declare that at the top. JComboBox. Let's call this fontBox. And we'll need an import. And we'll finish instantiating this after the color button. So right here is good. FontBox equals new JComboBox. With these JComboBoxes, we can add options to this JComboBox by passing in an array to this constructor. But we'll need to create an array of all the available fonts in Java. So let's do that right before the font box. So let's create an array of strings, and we'll call this fonts. And we need to get all of the current fonts available in Java. So what we do for that is we can type in graphics environment dot get local graphics environment dot get available font family names. And this will take all the fonts available in Java and assign them to our array of strings called fonts. And within the constructor of the JComboBox, we're going to pass in this array of fonts. Then we'll need to add an action listener to this JComboBox. So fontBox.add action listener. Since we're implementing the action listener interface, we can just pass in this. With these combo boxes, we can set an initially selected value. So let's do that. So to do that, it is fontBox.setSelected, either index or item. So pass in a font name that you want for the default. I'm just going to pick Arial because that's what I picked originally for this text area for the default text. So I'm just going to set this to Arial by default. Then we need to add this font box to the frame, and let's add that after the button. This.add font box. And then when we run this, we have a drop-down menu, a combo box with all of the fonts available to us. However, if we were to select one of these, we want to actually change the font because right now it doesn't currently do that. So within the action performed method, we're going to add an if statement to check to see if the event that is passed in is equal to our font box. We're going to add another if statement if e.getSource is equal to our fontBox. Then what we're going to do is change the current font for the TextArea. So TextArea dot set font, and we will pass in a new font. The only thing that we're going to change is the current font family. So fontBox dot get selected item. This is going to get the item of whatever we set the font box to, but we'll need to cast this as a string. So make sure to add this cast right before this. For the next argument, we can just set this to plain. So font.plain. And then we want to keep the font size the same as what it was previously. So for the third argument, we're going to get the current size of the text area, more specifically the font. So TextArea dot get font followed by dot get size. This will keep the font size the same. And that is it for the font box. Let's test this. This is some text. Going to increase the font size a little bit, and we should be able to change the font now. So pick whatever font you like. Are wingdings available? Oh, yeah, but you can't really display them. That's a shame. All right, so that's it for this portion. Let's add a menu bar. For this menu bar, I think we'll only have one tab just for file, and we'll only be able to open a file, save a file, or exit. So we'll need to create a menu bar, a menu, and then some menu items. So let's add a menu bar first, and we need to declare this JMenuBar. We will call this menu bar, and we will need a menu. So that's JMenu. We will call this file menu, and we need some items to add to this file menu. So these are JMenuItems, or singular, just item, and we will have an openItem item, and then a saveItem and exitItem. So saveItem and exitItem. And be sure to include these imports too. Now we need to set up this menu bar first. So let's add this after the font box. I think I'm just going to add a comment just to section off our menu bar area. So this isn't necessary, but this will help me organize things. All right, so we'll have a little section for our menu bar. So we need to finish instantiating everything. So for our menu bar equals new JMenuBar. We'll need to create the file menu. So that is file menu equals new JMenu. And we can set the text right away by passing it into the constructor. So we will set this to file, kind of like the tab on the top toolbar of your IDE. So it says file. I'm just going to mimic that. And we'll need to add some items to this file menu. So we need to finish instantiating all of these menu items. So we have open item equals new JMenuItem. And we will set the text right away. And this will be open. So we have open, save, and exit. Open item, save item. The text will be save, and then we need exit. Exit item, and exit. This next portion has multiple levels to it. We need to add all of these menu items to the menu, and then add the menu to the menu bar, and lastly add the menu bar to the frame. So our first step is to add these menu items to the menu. So we type in the name of the menu, which is file menu, and we use the add function. And we're going to add all of these individual menu items. So we need to begin with adding our open item, JMenuItem, followed by save item and exit item. So I'm just going to paste this a few times. And we have open item, save item, and then exit item. Now we need to add this menu to the menu bar. So this time we type in the name of the menu bar dot add, and we're adding our file menu this time. And lastly, we need to add this menu bar to the frame, but we don't use add. We type in this.setMenuBar, and we pass in our menu bar. And that's it. Oh, it's set JMenuBar. I constantly make that mistake. So this.set JMenuBar. And then when we run this, we should have a menu bar at the top. So we only have one menu, one tab, and it has 3 items: open, save, and exit. But we want these to do things, so we need to add some action listeners to each of these items. So let's do that here. So we have openItem.add action listener. Since we're implementing the action listener interface, we can just pass in this. So this, and let's repeat the process for save item and exit item. So we're just adding action listeners to all of these items. Now let's scroll down to the action performed method. We're going to create actions for each of the items within our menu. So we have if e.getSource is equal to our open item, that's our open button basically, then we're going to do something. And we'll need to do the same process for save item and exit item. So we have save item and exit item. Actually, let's fill in exit item because it's only going to take a second. To exit out of your program, it is just system.exit, and we pass in 0. And that's it. Let's try it. So I'm just going to type hello. This is kind of lame, so let's exit. Let's go to file and exit. It does the same thing as that X button in the top right corner of the window, but you can also do it here too. File, exit. So that's an option available to you. Let's work on save item next. Now within the if statement of e.getSource is equal to save item, we're going to need the help of our JFileChooser class, and we will select a file location to save our text to. So for the first line, we're going to create an instance of our JFileChooser class. So JFileChooser, let's call this instance FileChooser equals new JFileChooser. And you can also set a default directory of where you want to begin looking for a file location to save. So to do that, we type in the name of the file chooser, FileChooser.set current directory, and we pass in a new file with the file path. But if you want the default to be your project folder, all you have to do is type in a dot, and that's it. Otherwise, you can pass in a file path like c:/ blah blah blah, whatever you want. But let's just say I want my file path to begin in my project folder, so that is just a dot. And at this point, we need to open a show save dialog, and this returns an integer response. So we can actually store this within a variable. Let's call this variable response, and it stores an integer value. So we need to type FileChooser.show save dialog, not open dialog. And if you have a parent component, you can add that here, but we'll just say null for now. So we need to check to see what this response is. It's going to be either 0 or 1. So we can check that with an if statement. So if response is equal to 0, but a better way of writing this would be JFileChooser.approve option. So that would be better. So if they find a suitable file location, then we're going to create a new file and a print writer as well. So let's just declare a file, and a print writer, and we'll call this file out. All right, so let's finish instantiating this file. File equals new file, and we're going to get the current path of the file location that we selected for this response for file chooser. So we type file chooser dot get selected file dot get absolute path. So that's going to be stored within our file. And then we are going to print to our file out print writer. So we need to finish instantiating this, but we're going to probably need to put this within a try and catch block. So let's finish instantiating our print writer. So file out equals new print writer. And we're going to pass in our file. And we'll need to surround this with a try and catch block. All right, now for the second line of the try block, file out dot print line. And what we're going to print is textArea dot get text. And it would be good practice if we were to close this print writer. So let's add a finally block. So at the end of trying this, or if we catch an exception, we're still going to close our file out print writer. So file out dot close. Oh, and I think we need to initialize this. So let's change one thing. Print writer file out equals null. And then we're going to instantiate this within the try block. So then we can catch any exceptions that occur. So now we should be able to save a file someplace within our computer. So let's try this. Let's change the font slightly, maybe 30, and a color, why not purple? And then let's select a font. I wonder if there's ink free. I think it should be in here. There it is. All right, I'll write a poem. Roses are red, violets are blue, booty, 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 rockin' everywhere. And we should be able to save this. So let's go to File, Save. The default directory is now my project folder, but I can save this anywhere. Let's save this to my desktop. And we can pick a file name. I will save this as poem. And be sure to add the file extension. So I want to save this as a txt file, so that's .txt. You could save this as an HTML file too if you want to write an HTML file for a website or something. So I'm going to save this as poem.txt, and I'm saving this to my desktop. And this should be saved. Let's take a look. Well, welcome to my desktop, everybody. There's a bunch of junk in here, but here's that poem that we wrote. The font as well as the font color are not going to be saved since this is a plain text file, but all of the text is saved from the text editor. And here's that poem that we wrote. Roses are red, violets are blue, booty, 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 rockin' everywhere. Now we can actually edit this, save it, and then reload this into our text editor program. So I actually wrote a haiku for you guys. Your code is thunder, high above and travels far. Like, comment, and sub. So I'm going to File, Save, and we're just going to keep this as the same name, poem.txt. Now let's go to the openItem section of our actionPerformed method, and we are going to load this file this time. The first two lines of code are the same for the saveItem portion, and we can just copy these just to save some time. So it's going to be the same as JFileChooser. We'll call this fileChooser equals new JFileChooser, and you can set the current directory if you want. Now, an option available to you is that you can apply a filter to only search for certain file extensions. So if you want, this is how to do that. We're going to create a new instance of file name extension filter, and we will call this instance just filter equals new file name extension filter, but I'm just going to copy this. And within the constructor for this file name extension filter, we pass in a title as well as a file extension of what we want to look for. So if we only want to look for TXT files, let's say text files, this is what's going to appear in the drop-down menu. And this portion, this argument, is the file extension. So that is TXT. And in order to apply this filter, we need to set the file filter for the file chooser. So we type in the name of the file chooser dot set file filter, and we pass in our filter, which is filter. And that's it. Our next portion is that we're going to show open dialog, and this will return a response. So let's store that response within a variable called response. So this is normally a 1 or a 0 for the response. So int response equals fileChooser.show open dialog. Be sure you're not clicking show save dialog. It's going to be show open dialog. And if there's a parent component, you can add that here, but we don't have one, so let's set this to null. Then if response is equal to jFileChooser.approve option, then we are going to open this file. But let's create a new file. File equals new file. And within the constructor for this file, we're going to pass in fileChooser.getSelectedFile.getAbsolutePath. So let's create a scanner. We're going to call this fileIn, kind of like what we did with fileOut. So fileIn, and we'll set this to null for now, because we're going to instantiate this within a try and catch block. So fileIn equals new scanner, and we are going to pass in our file. And then it's going to prompt us for surrounding this with a try and catch block. So the second line within the try block, we're going to check to see if this file is in fact a file, like a legitimate file. So if file.isFile, then we are going to attempt to read this file. So while fileIn.hasNextLine, then we are going to read this file line by line, but we're going to store each line within a variable called line. And this is going to be reassigned a value after each iteration of the while loop. So string line equals fileIn.nextLine. This doesn't add enters to go down the next line when we actually load this. So I'm just going to add a new line after each line. So this is a new line character. And then we are going to append our text area. So textArea.append. And we are going to append this with our line. And then we should close the scanner at the very end. So let's add a finally block after the try and catch block. Finally, fileIn.close. And let's attempt to read that file of the haiku that we wrote. Currently nothing's within my text editor, right? Well, let's open a file. Let's go to File, Open, and the default directory is set to my project folder, but I can look anywhere. So that file is on my desktop, and since we applied a filter, I have either all files that I can search for, or just txt files. So this will only display folders and txt files. So here's my poem, poem.txt, and I'm going to open this. And here's that poem that we wrote. Your code is thunder, high above and travels far. Like, comment, and sub. And then you can change the color and everything too, so do whatever you want. Well, everyone, that's just how to create a basic text editor. There's still way more advanced stuff you can do, but since we're just beginners, I thought I would hold off on that for now. So if you want a copy of all this code, I'll post all of this in the comments down below. But yeah, that's one of a few ways in which you can create a simple text editor in Java. Why are you still watching? Hey you. Yeah, I'm talking to you. If you learned something new, then you can help me help you in 3 easy steps by smashing that like button, drop a comment down below, and subscribe if you'd like to become a fellow bro.